I used that video. And I had never known who did it.
Appearing for like 10 days and then disappearing.
I don't know what is more valuable for art.
Holiday Inn, I admit it was a mistake to paint on it.
It's like a war room. You're strategizing for your next endeavor.
The egg for me is a reminder that a revolution happened.
Port blast happens in the middle, but you're gone.
This will not push me out. What will?
How the hell do you process all of that and then go to do a master's degree?
He recognized it from the curtain pattern.
You just took me on a story that I did not expect to end with loss. Jad El Khoury, welcome to MTV.
Thank you, Ronnie.
I'm lucky that you're here. I almost feel like I caught you at a unique window where we can celebrate your art in Lebanon. Even though you left the country and you live in Norway, you're here and you have an art exhibit coming up. And the reason I'm extra lucky is that this episode comes out the night before your exhibit is featured in michel-el-murr in Galerie Tanit Wednesday evening. So anyone that's listening or watching, if you want to see Jad El Khoury's work on display, go to Galerie Tanit Wednesday. That's a long way of saying I'm always glad to share any ideas with you, whether they're art or not related to art. I find your mind to be both inquisitive and, permit me to say this, beautiful, because you express yourself and you do it in a way for all of us to see. So, with your permission, before we get into your current work, I want to dive back in history and honor the work you're best associated with and let that build up to your current journey. I know the basics. A few years ago in Times Square, a Swatch advertisement, and it's your work on display. I know the Holiday Inn story, where there's a really reckless artist scaling the Holiday Inn and drawing around shell holes on the side of the building, and a controversial subject, but you do it nonetheless. I know Burj El Hawa, the flapping curtains, for about a week. And I know your gift on war-torn buildings that come and go. Sometimes you're there, and then days later they're erased. But you're scaling the Civil War quite frequently. And on occasion, you get into Times Square. But it's mostly here. So I'd like you to talk about your work, what urban art means to you, and why, even though leaving this country 2 years ago, you're here displaying your art and you're back in Beirut.
Thank you, Ronnie, for this introduction, and it's a pleasure to be on your podcast. I've been watching all your episodes, and there's so many that I really like and learn from. So, yeah, I'm so happy to be here. You said it all right. So that's these are the like the highlights of my journey in art. Before that, maybe something you don't know, when I was like the whole thing started, how I got into art was when I was a kid in school, doodling on the table, like drawing these small figures, random lines. Probably because I used to space out a lot in the classes, and they got me in trouble. Like I was like kicked out of class so many times, but also I got a lot of encouraging and appreciation for these drawings from many, and I guess this gave me some confidence as a kid, and I just kept doing it. I kept doing these drawings. Until they reached, like you said, the Holiday Inn and the high rises in Beirut and Times Square. So the first interventions I have done in the city were on these accidental monuments, like these high rises that are filled with bullet holes and missile holes. I was, like you said, climbing with ropes, normally with half permission. Like there's mostly army base in most of those buildings, like Burj El-Hawa and Holiday Inn. So a permission from the Ministry of Defense was necessary. However, the owners of the building, like each building has a case. Like in Holiday Inn, I know that the owners are in conflict between each other. So it felt like if I'm gonna start asking, maybe it's gonna take forever. And
Yeah.
I just did the project, and eventually they got erased. And I understand that it was controversial. Today, looking back at this intervention, if I would have to, like, if I have the chance to redo what I did, I would maybe just climb down on the building without painting, just as a performative work. However, that was done, and I cannot take it back. And I paid the price. You know, I got a lot of hate attacks on social media when I did it. There was a lot of aggressive comments coming in. يكسر ايديه هالعمله وان شاء الله بينقصوا الحبال و things like that, which I don't think they are constructive in any way. However, there were some that were constructive, and these ones shaped my next installation, which was on Burj El-Murr. On Burj El-Murr, instead of drawing my doodles, my characters around the missile holes, I used the curtains that we normally see on the balconies in Beirut neighborhoods. And then it was the wind that was activating the structure. The same thing with Burj Al-Mur. The owner Solidaire did not know. I thought they didn't need to know because I got the permission from the Ministry of Defense, and they are the ones who are in the building. So again, I did the installation, and then when they saw it, I got an official warning from the court that saying that I have to dismantle. So the installation survived 10 days. It was, on every window of the tower, a curtain. So 400 windows, 400 curtain. And I think the power in this one was first that it's temporary. It's not a permanent like painting on the building. It's something that can be removed, and it was removed. I guess that's why it was well received compared to Holiday Inn. And another thing which gave it so much power is the wind. Like, it was bringing environmental sensitivity on a city scale. It was like every second changing, generating fiction by the second. And I met one of your guests through George Azar.
Yeah, of course.
He filmed from his balcony a video because, since I was so busy trying to convince Solidaire to keep the installation, I couldn't document like as I wanted the installation. And after removing it, I was so regretting not taking like still video from one angle showing how the curtains are moving, like keep the camera for like 15 minutes or something, just showing the curtains moving. I couldn't do that because I was just trying to convince Solidaire to keep the installation. But maybe a few weeks later, after removing it, George Hazar texts me and tell me that he have taken this video. He have taken a video from his balcony. It's 15 minutes, still like frame, and you would see the curtains moving, and it's endless encounters that happened through this installation. It took me so many places.
There's something about the richness of stories within this very tiny place where the same person sitting in your chair a few months ago, George Azar, I would have never known that the video of Burj El Hawa, your curtains flapping, was filmed by him. I used that video. And I had never known who did it. It's online. I think it's on your channel.
Yep.
But I pulled a bit of it to actually try to show just how successful that installation was. Never occurred to me that's the same person that I speak with regularly and has been on this podcast. You mentioned already something, and we can dance with this as much as you'd like. The difference between permanence and temporary display. I'd like to get your take on the benefits of both and the disadvantages of both. The first time I met you, you were in your home and studio getting ready to do some work. And your work is not usually at home. It's not like you sit on a laptop and do an Excel sheet. You're actually, it's like a war room. You're strategizing for your next endeavor. You were getting ready to go to the egg in the middle of the October 17 uprising, and you were getting ready to surprise us all with paint. Paint thrown from the roof, but displaying in a way that almost makes sense with the structure. It bends to the structure's geography, and it's still there. 4 years later, your art display, with or without permission, I doubt you had any permission for that moment, everyone was at the egg, it's still there. And that to me is a permanent reminder of your work. Now and then, if I walk in Jamaise and I look up near Art House, some of your doodles, and I don't know what was it potato nose? Was that the old reference to it?
Yeah.
So you have these potato nose like creatures doodled across facades of buildings. They're still there. There was a time where I would drive back and forth from the ring, slow down, and watch Burj El Hawa, and I wish that was permanent. But I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. And also, all your other doodles that sketched parts of Khanda al-Ghami and downtown south of the ring, I wish those were there, and they're not. And sometimes even something terrible happens. A cheap advertisement can block it unexpectedly, or it's removed entirely. But I don't know what is more valuable for art, and I'd like your take on that. Whether you think temporary has its ups, its obvious downs, and what you think about permanence in your own work.
It depends a lot on each project, on each building, each monument or accidental monument, like I said. So there's no general rule to that, which is best or better. Like for example, with the egg paint example, for this one, it was a momentum. It was during the protests, and if you look at the egg now, it's filled with graffiti and paint. It's not only the colors I added; it's so many. And I think they are very important because they remind us that of an important phase in our country's recent history. Yeah, so I cannot say that temporary is better than permanent or the opposite. It depends each time on the project. For Burj El Hawa, for example, it was important to be temporary. Even if it wasn't for Solidaire, I would have removed them anyways because it kind of gives an impression or an illusion that we have reached a reconciliation after the civil war and everything's okay and we have like moved on, but that's not true, and we know that we're still suffering from the same problems. So having it temporary was very important, like having it appearing for like 10 days and then disappearing was necessary. It shouldn't have stayed more.
Let's play with that. Let's use the examples that at least that I know. You can add others if I'm unaware of them. Of your decision to make something temporary with or without Solidaire. So let's say a week later or maybe a month later, you would have removed those curtains. But you decide to make art that's permanent on the egg. And you're right, there's other graffiti there, but yours stands out because it's so colorful and it's so bright and warm. It's the first thing you see when you look at the egg. The Holiday Inn was a permanent sort of artistic reinterpretation of war, but it was removed.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, did you remove it yourself?
No.
No. So it was actually somebody else had to scale and remove it. That poor guy. But you wanted to play with both. What makes you go permanent with the Holiday Inn or the egg and temporary with Burj El-Murr? They're all Civil War relics.
Yeah, again, Holiday Inn, I admit it was a mistake to paint on it. I know many people also think that it was fun to have drawings. It wasn't all necessarily all negative comments. However, for me, I think if I would have the chance to do it again, I would just climb on it and that's it. And Burj El Hawa is more of reshaping.
Let's use the egg then. That's not temporary.
The egg for me is a reminder that a revolution happened. I think it was important to have it like painted, not necessarily like with my work. It's also others, so it's just a reminder that it was taken back.
So let me push this as
yeah.
far as I can.
Yeah, yeah,
The buildings in Al Khanda
yeah.
that were meant to be temporary art, permanent art, and then were later removed. Why do you go permanent there and not temporary? Is it
Khanda
because
is which one?
you had those on the ring, those big buildings that had sort of the doodles along the
Yeah.
facades?
These were still there. It's covered by an advertising now. So once they remove it, for example, I think that's like the building on the ring was done before Holiday Inn, and it wasn't as controversial. Maybe because it's not as like striking by its existence as Holiday Inn. You know, Holiday Inn, from its scale and being surrounded by these new varnished high rises by superstar architects, maybe makes it stand out. And yeah, plus the stories and the battles that happened.
No, there's a lot of burden placed on the
Yeah.
Holiday Inn, and sometimes it's unfair. I think the amount of criticism somebody can get for wanting to do something, but yeah, it does have its place in war. But you're determining your permanence or your temporary art based on context. I guess that's what I'm getting. It's not something it's not a constant thread. You're literally looking at the site and determining then what is permanent and what is not.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It depends a lot on that. Yeah.
Well, let's then fast forward a bit. In the middle of October 17, you're doing your work. I come to know you through that, even though I knew your work earlier without recognizing you. And then less than a year later, you're in Norway. Of course, the port blast happens in the middle, but you're gone. And I don't know what it's like to grow up in a country that gives you war inspiration, real carnage and gore, and you're finding your art there, at least it reflects itself naturally there, to one of the most tranquil, with all due respect, boring, stable, clean. I don't remember the last time Norway had a war. Maybe hundreds of years ago, there was a conflict that no one reads about anymore because it's way past its history. And you show up in Oslo as a Lebanese artist with war art under your belt. So what is that process like to go to Norway and still produce art related to this country?
Yeah, just before going to Norway, there was a year in 2019 after Burj El Hawa installation, where I was getting a lot of commissions to go to new places and to reactivate abandoned buildings through installing curtains, through exhibiting the wind, installing curtains on the empty windows.
You were typecasted as the curtain guy.
Yes, it became like that. It was like I went to Sicily, to Dunkirk in France, Stavanger, Corsica, and others. But then COVID came, and it was at the same time I was accepted at this school in Kyo at the Oslo National Academy of the Art. And then I got accepted in a master program called Art and Public Space, which is exactly what I have been practicing for 10 years before the school. And just 2 days before moving to Oslo, the explosion happened. And I lost many friends. Jean-Marc Bonfils, the architect of the building where the Galerie Tanit is, where I'm exhibiting, was in his house when it happened, and he died. Gaia Foudolian, daughter of Annie, she's also a gallerist curator. Marion Ibrahim Shah, she was a sponsor. She sponsored a Batroun installation that I did on the aquarium.
Yes, of course.
She also died in her house. And we know many others. So just 2 days after that, I was in Oslo. And yeah, in this new context where no one could relate to anything I'm going through, and
May I interrupt?
yeah,
I did not know that you lost that many friends on that day. So I was unaware of that. Although I should assume that that is such a particular location for artists that you would lose friends. It didn't occur to me. How the hell do you process all of that and then go to do a master's degree? That
yeah.
must be insane.
Well, I saw it as a push to get out. Like, if this will not push me out, what will?
So what is it like to then arrive at a otherwise functioning environment?
It wasn't like at its best state, Oslo, at the time, because it was COVID. So everything was closed, and I spent a lot of time alone in that phase. And honestly, it was time that made me get back on my feet. Like, time was the space I needed, and that got me through that. I was distracting myself a lot through through art projects, like school projects. And I'm gonna tell you the story of the project I did for the school the first year I arrived. So they asked us to propose an installation for a new art center that is in a suburb of Oslo. And as my previous projects is mostly site-specific works, and for this suburb, since it had a lot of urban development happening, and with my background being an architect, I was walking around and interviewing locals and documenting this change, like the small houses, small wooden houses getting destroyed, and to take for new high rises to take place. And I met many, like the starting point was a coffee shop. They had some doodles on the wall. So I asked who's the artist who did that. I met him, and he told me about a house that its owner is not selling for the developers. So I met this guy, and he showed me that he was in the press. He made an installation with balloons to show how high the high rise will be next to his house, and how the developers are pushing him to sell his house. And next to that guy, there was a small wooden house about to be destroyed. It was emptied. And on its two windows, on the main facade, one of the two windows had the same type of curtains that I work with.
Mm.
It was just there, as if I installed it, an empty abandoned building with the same type of curtain on its window. And I called it the winking house because it looked like a wink. And I asked the company that is demolishing if I can take the debris from the house, and they accepted. So I used this debris to rebuild the wing for the exhibition. And then on the opening of the exhibition, one of my classmates, she worked with a rehab center, local rehab center in there, a participatory project where the patients in the rehab center have helped her in her art installation. And she invites the patients to come see the exhibition. And one of the patients recognized his house. This is my house, he says.
Oh, wow.
He recognized it from the curtain pattern. And it turned out that he used to serve with the Norwegian army in the UN in Lebanon.
Oh, you're kidding.
And because after coming back from his service, he was very much in pain and traumatized, and he started using drugs. Then he got heart stroke and brain stroke, which led to losing one of his eyes. So he's the winking man who found his winking house.
Well, that's a very dark sense of humor. I hope he enjoyed it.
He did. It was as good for him as it was for me to meet, because, as I said, I was in this phase where I was still trying to learn how to live with the pain of loss and grief.
I'm glad you're going there. With your permission, I want to explore this as much as you'd like, so you can set the limits to this.
Yeah.
You just took me on a story that I did not expect to end with loss, pain, and almost a sense of mourning on Norwegian terms, meaning it's a Norwegian soldier in South Lebanon, in Unifil, I assume, Unifil. who you cross paths with by accident and
By
recognizes
rebuilding his house.
by rebuilding his house, and he recognizes his life through your work,
Yeah.
which is, for better or worse, it is associated with that type of curtain pattern, and he catches it. Everything up until that point, to me, there's a disconnect between the Lebanese experience of a building that's abandoned like that and the Norwegian experience where it's simply urban planning.
Capitalism taking over.
I'll say it better. Urban planning and abandoned buildings in Oslo, to me, don't carry the same weight as Burj El-Murr or the Holiday Inn. There's a added component, which is war. And with war, a lot of death. And within your own story, which you shared a bit of, you're grieving your own loss too. It's not just a country, it's your friends, people you know. That kind of experience, and then trying to look at it from Norway, I personally find it very difficult to relate. And I can imagine it's something that you take with you, but is not necessarily shared in its entirety. Did you find an audience there that understood beyond that soldier, who's a very unique example? Did you find anyone truly understanding what you're doing? Or does it go on deaf ears sometimes that they just simply cannot relate?
Well, I think the essence in this project, especially after meeting the Winking Man, was that it's about healing. It's about finding ways to live with the pain, and that's I think a subject that people can relate to no matter where they are from. Each has their own experiences and their own. But when it comes to abandoned buildings and the difference between abandoned buildings in different places, yeah, of course, it's different when it's an abandoned building because of a war or because of urban development or because of lack of jobs and people leaving the town. Like in Sicily, the building I worked with was in a village where all people are leaving because there's no opportunities to stay there. So in each place, the abandoned building has a story, has a reason why it's abandoned, and those reasons, I think, they are always interesting. Yes, they could be heavier here, more than another place, but yeah, I guess they are interesting for me at least.
Before we get to your current work and the exhibit that will be on display, the journey through healing, did you find any of what you were doing here trying to play that role and failing? In other words, you can go to Oslo and get the Winking Man to heal. You can even help Oslo find a way to reconcile some of its urban planning. You just mentioned a town in Sicily. A town in, was it Sicily? You said, yeah. Where was I forgot the name of the town.
It's Favara.
Favara. Okay, so a place I don't even know where that is. Favara. The town is, there's an exodus due to economic lack of economic prosperity, and maybe that town gets a gift by this Lebanese artist who knows how to bring some life to an abandoned building. Or Dunkirk in France? Dunkirk. Okay, places that are remote to me. But you're able to heal abroad. Maybe you're even able to heal yourself a bit, maybe. But in this country, did you find yourself trying to apply that and simply unable to do much with that?
For me, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist, and it's not what I'm trying to do here.
I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
That's actually well said. I've had one guest told me the same thing.
Yeah.
My first episode on my podcast, Jad El Khoury.
Okay.
He's like, I'm not a therapist.
Yeah.
I'm not a psychologist. I'm not here to offer therapy. I appreciate that.
Yeah, but I try through what I learned through my experience and to do what I can. First for myself to be well, and then if I can also do this for others, that would be like ideal. From this like serendipity that happened with the Winking House, Winking Man, I became so like interested in trying to connect serendipity with healing, especially when it comes to meeting people and building communities. And I saw a lot of examples of artists working around that. One of them is collective of artists called Future Farmers, and they have made this garden in Oslo on top of a highway. It's just like amazing to know that when you're in the garden, there's underneath a highway, and they have there this like communal kitchen where anyone can go participate in cooking, and you would meet people there. And that was so helpful when I arrived, knowing no one. It helped a lot to feel this sense of community. And I try to do works that are participatory, socially engaging works. My graduation project for the school was a picnic blanket. I used the curtains on the floor in opposition to the Burj El Hawa installation, where it's like vertical and large scale. Here it's horizontal on the floor. You can sit on it, and each time it would have a theme. Like for the graduation, I invited professionals in art with students from the school I was in to meet. I cannot make serendipity, but I can enhance the chances of it happening. And I think there's some healing in there when you meet people and things start to happen.
Did you find any success here? Because I know that it's unfair to compare Beirut to Oslo.
Yeah.
It's unfair to compare the art scene. I think it's probably unfair to compare Beirut to any other city. It's its own ecosystem and it's small. But did you find any of that process happening here? Would you consider any of your, not art therapy, but your art in public space a success, the way you would measure it?
The last work I have done here, before the exhibition I'm working for now, it was Burj El Hawa. So since then, all the works were in Oslo. So I haven't implemented yet what I learned in Oslo.
The egg was, I think, post Burj El Hawa.
Yeah, maybe the egg, but I don't know why I consider the egg I don't put it on my portfolio. And honestly, if you wouldn't have mentioned it now, I would never say that I did it, because you know when you said when you look at the egg with the paint, you remember my work.
Yeah,
that's not what I want, you know. So I prefer if you remember that a revolution happened, a protest happened through these interventions on the egg.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
That also plays to this story, which is it's not working here. The measure of success, the way you define it, it's not happening here. Instead, relics are left behind, but there's no real healing or success. And I think you just, maybe unintentionally, you pointed at it's a revolt that dies quickly, but your paint is still there. And maybe subjectively, because I'm aware that October 17 is now history, it's not with us right now, your paint is still there. So I think, oh, that's Jad El Khoury. But that's maybe just a personal relationship to work.
Yeah, I think so, because many don't know, or most people don't know that who did this, and I hope that it reminds them that a protest happened, and ask for change happened.
So the next time anyone asks me, I'll say October 17 did that.
Yeah, would be nice.
Who's October 17? Jad El Khoury. So let's jump from the last.
No, I just want to say one more thing. This a picnic blanket that I made, for me it was an attempt to make a moving garden, like the garden I mentioned in Oslo, one that can move around. Because I also used it recently in a land art festival. It was in Gjerdrum, a city close to the airport in Oslo. Sorry for laughing, it's just the name that maybe is strange. So in this town, there was a landslide that happened 2 years ago, and many people died. Like the land just slided, and many houses were destroyed, and around 10 people died. And in a small town like this, everyone got affected, and you can, like, I met many people, tried to talk to them, and it's still hard to talk about it for them. Met the rescue team who were there on that night, and I did a picnic again, inviting the locals and the rescue team to share their stories. because I have picked some stories while talking to the rescue team. Like, for example, when they arrived the night of the slide, they didn't know the scale of the slide. They didn't know where it's safe to park their trucks. And the local guy cleaning the snow told them this area is safe. And this local knowledge that allowed him to be like sure of himself and tell them, and this information helped them probably save lives, because anyway, it was something that that I did again with this town, the picnic.
Before we get to your current work, I just need to emphasize you've done other things too, and sometimes it's a strange world where I'm going to attend a discussion on neutrality and defense and among diplomats in an embassy, and I walk in and your work is on display. You're in the Swiss embassy. You're on a wall. And immediately I'm like, that's Jad El Khoury,
Yeah.
the Swiss ambassador, huge former Swiss ambassador. Monica, I forgot her last name. I don't remember her last name, but she's a big fan of yours. And we spent maybe 15 minutes talking about your work. So you enter diplomacy by accident. And I'm going to just speculate that's probably, it helped get to Swatch later. And I think Swatch is a Swiss company.
No, it wasn't related. It's
Unrelated.
too separated.
Okay, good. So
I got Swatch
Mafi
from
corruption
no,
with
no.
Swiss.
I got Swatch from Arte Laguna Prize in Venice.
Yeah.
They gave me a prize for Burj El Hawa installation, two art residencies, one in Sicily where I did the Beirut Pavilion, and one in Stavanger, and the Swatch commission.
Well,
yeah.
All the more reason that you pop up in strange places,
Yeah.
like Times Square.
Yeah.
So you are not confined to Beirut, but you're from this place and your art trickles into things that are not expected. And now you're back displaying work that you've worked on from abroad. But if I understood right, this work is, in a way, the inspiration comes from here. So let's talk about your upcoming exhibit. What exactly are you doing? And maybe a more personal question, why are you doing it here? It's the place that you lost friends. It's the place you departed from 3 years ago. It's a place that wounded you in many ways, but you're back. So why did you make that decision?
It's also the place I grew up in. Yes, of course, it's even though I'm in Oslo, especially the first 2 years. Now maybe it's changing, but the first 2 years it was complete confusion. Like my mind would be here, but physically I'm there, and it's so confusing. I don't think one can detach from the place they grow up in. There's a lot of memories, and it's not like you cannot just put this all behind you. It's impossible. But I'm at the same time so happy to be learning new things in Oslo and discovering and keeping this sense of curiosity active. Even though I've been there, I've been coming to Beirut at least twice a year and trying to engage and make projects as much as I can. And the one I'm working on now started in summer. I came for 2 weeks where I was using the curtains this time as a sign that I follow, like to meet the people who live in the building where the curtains I choose is. Mostly I chose curtains that are very much destroyed, ruined, and the focus was on the neighborhoods around the port explosion. And there was a lot of meetings, a lot of interesting interviews. Like one of the people who I met was I was with Sarah, a friend of mine, and she was documenting through pictures. You will see these pictures in the exhibition. And we met an old guy living with his siblings. He's like more than 80 years old. And one asked him where he was when the explosion happened. He go to his like closet and get like pile of papers, sits and start to read poems that he have written about that. He have written a lot of poems about the people who helped him the second day, who came and cleaned the house. He said the three siblings are old, and they couldn't sleep that night because it was glass in the mattress. Um, yeah, it's just so many stories. There's like someone who would tell you that he flew and then the metal shutter of the shop fell on his face and he lost his teeth. And it's yeah, it's a lot to take. It was intense. However, I recorded all the interviews, and I'm not gonna. I didn't make a sound piece where I'm gonna exhibit it. I cannot take these like so intense personal stories and make art out of that. It's impossible. It's so heavy. What I'm gonna do is a walk on Saturday after the opening. We will do a walk. Anyone is welcome. We will go through these locations where I changed curtains for people. Like the curtains I followed, I took and installed new ones instead. So we're gonna pass into these locations. It's 13 houses and shops. And a few of these places, I chose the people who really have like a lot to say and want to talk, who will be where we will be stopping, and they will personally share their stories.
Without knowing too much about the exhibit itself, am I describing it right that its inspiration is tied to the port blast's aftermath, and it's still leaning on curtains, which is something that you've become most associated with, but it's not only curtains, and that it's a celebration of healing post-war, post-blast? Is that a accurate description?
Yeah. And if you wanna like go into why the curtains, honestly, it started with being a practical material to use it on Burj El-Murr because I wanted something that would move with the wind. And something that's very present in the urban fabric of Beirut that people can relate to. So that's how it started. But today, looking more in depth into that, I think they are very valuable material because they kind of make a scene in the streets, and especially with their colors and movement with the wind. So they have this poetic effect on the city. So yeah, I think that's what made me want to change the old ones with new ones, and I think this project can be upscaled. Like at some point, I can make whole neighborhoods, not only 13 houses.
So without interfering in your process, how do you meet these people? Do you literally walk from shop to shop and introduce yourself as I'm Burj El Hawa, I'm the egg? No, I'm kidding. I mean,
it's very simple. Like you just tell the people, do you want your curtain changed? And then he will not just say yes. He will tell you, I have my uncle also. He wants, and my neighbor wants.
And you introduce yourself as an artist or as a
Yeah, I make sure they know
tailor.
that I'm not doing it as a charity thing.
Yeah.
It's an art project, and I'm using the old curtains. I need the old curtains for the gallery space installation.
And just for me to understand, are you walking from place to place? So you're scouting.
Yeah.
It's not that people are approaching you saying, you're looking. So this is confined, I guess, to Marim Khail, Jamaizi, Ashrafi area, I guess, mostly in Karantina.
And Burj Hamoud.
And Burj Hamoud, yeah. One more question. Why are you so attached to these curtains in principle? I know that they offer life. They flow in the wind. They're beautiful to look at. But I would guess that's not your passion in life, is curtains.
No, not at all.
And a lot of things represent Lebanon or Beirut.
Yeah.
Other than curtains. So I don't think it's not a fair association in that you are locked with that, but it seems to continue in your art. So where does that come from?
Yeah, if you look at the materiality and the work, yes, it's still the same. It's the curtains. But if you look at how it's being used or approached in different ways, or how it generate different things every time, like from bringing environmental sensitivity with the dance with the wind on the tower, to being a picnic blanket, bringing people together, to now opening up meetings and interviews and stories of people. So yes, it's the same material, but what's happening around that, I think, is the art.
That's interesting though, because it seems to work, but yet I guess I'm asking, have you tried other stuff and it doesn't work right? Are you landing on curtains because they give you more than you expected?
Yeah, honestly, after the series of commission that I got in many places after Burj El Hawa, I felt it's becoming too repetitive, and I should
Yeah.
start with something new. And I went to school to look
Oh.
for something new.
That's
And then I got this winking house with the curtain on it, so it was just there.
so the curtains are chasing you. It's not like
it
you're
chased
looking
me.
for
It
them.
chased me. Yeah, what
That's
can I say?
interesting.
Yeah.
I want you to explain yourself to someone who doesn't know you. I'm trying to think of a talented, gifted artist in Norway presenting themselves, or maybe sometimes selling themselves. That's not a nice way of describing it, but I think there is a bit of somebody has to make a living somehow in this world, and there is a lot of this. You have to at least pitch yourself when necessary. How do you do that? What are the words that come to you when people ask, who you are?
It's always different, depending on who I'm talking to. But mostly, I like to let the work talk for itself by showing the progress, the process. Depends how long I have also to tell. Sometimes I go from the beginning to what I'm doing now. Sometimes I select only 3 projects that would show the evolution in the work. So the way I present myself varies based on the context. If I'm presenting to a museum, it's different than if I'm presenting to the people I was changing curtains for. So it depends who I'm talking to.
I didn't ask it right. Does Lebanon come in the description?
Absolutely. I think there's no escape from that because the main works I have done were here and were about here. And even now when I try to work about healing and serendipity, it's coming because of here. So
do you literally say my work is inspired by Lebanon? Are those words that come out of your mouth?
I would say my art practice is affected by growing up in Lebanon.
That's okay. So that's interesting, and this is where I kind of want to get to, and this is a give and take. You can debate me as you choose. I'm going to throw a lot on you right now. I don't see you as somebody affected by Lebanon. I see you as Lebanon, and that's why when I look at the egg, I think of you. I'm not thinking of a revolution, or I'm not thinking about paint. I'm thinking of you, and I associate you with the location. When I saw your work on display, flapping, I didn't know it was you, but that to me is this country. And the name becomes synonymous. And all of the sketches that are still surviving, that you've done, some of them hidden, some not, you become more than Lebanon, you become the fabric of this country. And that's, I think, what art and public space are all about. At least that's the way I see it. And I don't know if even if your work is better respected in bigger circles away from this country, and I think any artist who leaves this country today will find some success abroad. It's hard to find that success here. But for me, it doesn't matter. I think it only matters when it's here. And now I'm going to flip it on myself. These conversations to me are meaningless abroad, but they mean everything here. And we could do the same exact discussion in Oslo. It wouldn't impact me one bit. I have to do it here. There's something about being here and having your art on display here. To me, it fills in what Lebanon means to me too. So, I'd like this back and forth. Am I overstepping by suggesting that your work is not affected by Lebanon? Your work is Lebanon. It just happens to be in Oslo at the moment.
I don't know what to say to that. Like it's a different way to interpret it as well. Like when you say your work is Lebanon, how should I understand? How can I understand that it can be taken in different ways? Because if we go back to the
Those
facts
curtains in Dunkirk, to me, are nothing. They're the curtains here that matter.
I see. But that's because of your attachment to Lebanon, right?
I like to think that your art is equally attached to this country too. It's not affected by it.
Mm.
It is this country.
Mm.
But no, I'm interrupting you. You tell me why maybe I'm not seeing it right.
No, it's not that. It's just that when I think of again healing, I don't think it's necessarily only applicable in Lebanon. It can be anywhere, really. So yeah, but there is very much an influence from here. Yes, an affection. I would think, but to say that it is Lebanon, I don't know. It's it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's fair to say this, because then it will make me or my work very much locked in one place.
Yeah. You know, I think this is there's always a fork in the road at that moment where a real artist should not be locked.
Mm.
A real artist should find themselves anywhere. I lock myself deliberately. But that's where I find everything, in that locked space. And it's not just about art. It's not just about urban art. It includes to me film, music, painting, healing to me. With all due respect to Oslo and those other villages that you went to, I think the healing here is what matters. Even if it's momentary, even if it's limited, those 13 shopkeepers to me mean so much more. Even if their place gets blown up again. I think that's where maybe the spirit of an artist demands being set free. And I probably find myself more comfortable in that confined space. But I like your work here. I tried looking at some of your work abroad. It didn't have the same impact. It felt like that stuff should be here.
Did you see the installation in the Street Art Museum in Amsterdam?
No, I did not see that.
I would like to share this one.
Please,
It's a metal shutter, 5 by 3.5 meter. You know, the shops, when they close, they have this metal rolling shutter. It's filled with bullet holes and like traces from an explosion next to it. So I shipped this shutter from Beirut to Amsterdam. And it's exhibited at the museum, where visitors from all over the world, since it's a touristic city, there's a text telling them to leave a message of hope, and they can place, after writing on a paper, they can place it in the bullet hole. And every month they send me a box of messages that I organize workshops with. So I think in this example, I'm bringing it in because I think it shows like a bit how my work function. It's related to here, but yes, also it's bringing in people from all over the world. I have in these letters I'm getting, in these messages, so many languages, like from really everywhere. And yeah, I think that's very valuable for me, to mix all these different perspectives and cultures. Like when I was in school, one of the things I appreciated the most is the fact that I'm surrounded by this international community, and you learn a lot from that. So yeah, that's where the fear of being locked comes from, because I saw how amazing it is to learn from different angles and different cultures and backgrounds.
When all those cultures and backgrounds are here in different ways, and there's nothing more diverse than this country at its best, it's hard for me to see the value of an artist that knows this place inside out finding themselves abroad. But I think the burden is really on an artist being able to survive here, and that it's so difficult to shine now anyway, that it's an unfair circumstance that even if you wanted to stay, you'd have to find work abroad to make ends meet. But I think that is the blessing of being from here, is that you'll not really find inspiration, I think, beyond this place. I think it's always shades of this. but this is my very romantic view of Lebanon. I'd like to give the last stretch to you. If you could summarize the exhibit in a way for somebody who doesn't know your work, what to expect on the exhibit itself, and anything you want to share about Tanit.
Okay. So the exhibition is happening on Wednesday 29 at 6 p.m., 6 till 9. Then there's a walk on Saturday, the Saturday after, at noon. And you can register just by sending a message to the gallery on Instagram or email. And what will you see in the exhibition is the process coming forward. For me, the process of walking around, selecting the curtains, meeting the people and interviewing them, replacing the curtains for them, and working with the old ones for the gallery space. That is the art. It's the process. And what you will see there is the used curtains sewn together, fixed in an installation-like setting, a map of where the interventions happened, and the photo documentation, both printed and projected.
I think it's a fabulous way to honor some of those friends and professional colleagues that died due to the blast. And at the same location of that suffering, you're sharing your art once more. And I would never be afraid to take decisions that are unpopular. I still think, even if it was not entirely well received, you scaling the Holiday Inn, the thought process of doing that, the courage it takes, and the real fear. Forget the art; it's the person behind it. I think we need more of you in Lebanon and not less. And I hope you do more of these types of public interventions because the city needs it. And I'm glad you're doing your exhibit here, not elsewhere. So, thank you, Jad El Khoury, for joining MTV.
Thank you.